Keep watching The Politics every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on New York Parrot TV, the voice for humanity.
Welcome to Talking Politics. My name is Robert Press. I am a reporter, as you can see by my official New York City press card. I write for the Bronx Post, like this show, a part of Parrot Media Corporation. I also have a blog at www.100%.blogspot.com and Facebook pages 100% and what is going on in your local community board. My co-host is Anthony Rivieccio. So, Anthony, why don't you introduce yourself?
Good morning, Robert. Good morning, everyone. My name is Professor Anthony Rivieccio. As most people know, I have 3 lives, but today you're looking at one person with an official IRS calculator that's stressed out of his mind because I'm wearing my hat as an income tax advisor. Happy Friday, everybody.
The views expressed on this show are those of the host, any guest, or anyone commenting at the bottom of the screen, and not necessarily that Parrot Media Corporation. Let's go to a quick weather report today, Friday, for the New York Yankee home opener. There's my Yankee jacket, my Yankee, hat. I got a Met jacket. Yeah. Can't you see NY?
Okay, yeah, I see. I
see from Yankee Stadium.
Okay.
And it should be a nice day at the stadium. It should get up into the 60s. Hopefully, the Yankees will continue on their winning streak. Saturday, the high is expected to be 73 with 66 for Easter Sunday and late rain. Monday, it cools down to into about 56, and the rest of the week is going to be about in the low 50s, getting up into the 60s and 70s later in the week. Let's go to Iran, Anthony.
To get on their winning streak.
Let's go to Iran. Trump has repeatedly emphasized that the U.S. is obliterating Iran's military capacities, but the U.S. can only confirm about 1/3 of Tehran's missiles arsenal has been destroyed, Reuters reports. The status of another third is less clear, but it's likely they have been damaged or buried. That's important because Gulf Arab states, which have faced the brunt of Iran's direct military retaliation, are telling the U.S. that ending the war through diplomacy is not enough. They want to see Tehran's military capacity permanently degraded, and that any agreement must also ensure the Strait of Hormuz is never employed as a tool of war. The war in Iran has officially passed the 1-month mark, and the violence shows that few signs of slowing down. Iran struck Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia Sunday, wounding 12 U.S. troops, 2 seriously in a combined missile and drone attack that represented one of the most serious breaches of American air defenses in the course of the war. The Pentagon is drawing up plans for potential weeks of boots on the ground in Iran if Trump should choose to go forward with such operation. The ground mission wouldn't be a full-scale invasion, but might instead comprise both special operations and infantry around Karg Island, where the major production of oil is in Iran, and other places near the Strait of Hormuz in an effort to take the territory and free up the crucial shipping passageway. News of plans come as a unit of thousands of Marines landed in the region Tuesday. Pakistan says it has reached a deal with Iran to get 20 of its ships passage through the Strait of Hormuz in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, a Saudi Arabia pipeline that gets around the strait is now operating at full capacity, which has helped keep oil prices from going even higher. Trump has confirmed to the Financial Times that an invasion of Karg Island in the Persian Gulf is under consideration. Maybe we take Karg Island, maybe we don't. We have a lot of options, Trump said.
Robert, I got to remind you of something.
Yes.
Starting next week, right, when we put together our dialogue and monologue for this show, we have to start charging promotional rates to these Middle East countries. You just spent 5 minutes of valuable airtime talking about everything that had nothing to do with the United States of America.
Well, President Trump has harsh words for the U.S. allies, saying they should reopen the Strait of Hormuz themselves, and seeking to partly wash his hands of the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran from Politico. You have to start learning how to fight for yourself. The USA won't be there to help you anymore, just like you weren't here for us, he wrote on True Social and repeated Wednesday night on national TV. Iran has essentially been decimated. The hard part is done. Go get your own oil, Trump said. And as far as
Bob, the only reason why I got to believe him, I was having a conversation with someone about this the other night. The only reason I got to believe him is because with all of the power that we've put into this war in the last month, if we haven't disseminated them by now, then Trump needs to be fired.
Well, on the Ukrainian front, President Vladimir Zelensky said his country's intelligence shows that Russia surveilled a U.S. military base and likely shared the info with Iran shortly before Iran struck it and injured several troops. Okay, now, in case you didn't know, or in case anyone watching hasn't heard, President Donald Trump on Thursday said that Pam Bondi is out as his attorney general. The departure follows months of scrutiny over the Justice Department handling of files related to the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking investigation and failed efforts to meet Trump's unwavering demands for criminal cases against his adversaries. Pam Bondi is a great American patriot and a loyal friend who faithfully served as my attorney general over the past year, Trump said in a statement. He added she will be transitioning to a much-needed and important new job in the private sector to be announced at a state in the near future. Trump has named...
Let me ask you one question. Just one. If there was anybody in the world besides Donald Trump that would know his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, who would it be?
Who would it be? Well, he's dead by now, Jeffrey Epstein.
Who alive would it be?
Who alive? That's a good question. Who?
Pam Bondi. Because if she did her job, which I actually believe she did, she has seen every picture. She has seen every report. And she has not denied her loyalty to Donald Trump through this whole process. That's why I say this like with a lot of announcers and a lot of other people in the last 24 hours, if I ever took a corporate America job again and got fired, I want to get fired the same way, with glowing reviews, and I got an anticipated job in the future. Okay. Right. That woman was fired only on paper. Donald Trump is going to take good.
And meanwhile, he has named Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche as one of his former personal leaders as the acting Attorney General, and is expected to pick Lee Zeldin who currently heads the EPA, as his permanent pick as Attorney General.
Now that's our Lee Zeldin, right? Lee Zeldin from New York.
Yeah.
So we're going to say a prayer for him right now.
All right. I got 1 minute to get this and another item in. Bondi has called the job the honor of a lifetime and said she will be working over next month transitioning the position to Blanche. She rejected accusations that she politicized the department and saw her mission to restore the institutional credibility after overreach by President Joe Biden's Democratic administration. And again, in case you haven't seen it, the Artemis 2 mission began at 6:24 p.m. Eastern Time Wednesday. Artemis is NASA's first manned mission to the moon since 1972. It's a flyby, not a landing. 4 astronauts are on board. They'll slingshot around the moon before heading home, traveling further from Earth than any human being has done. The next step towards what NASA hopes will be a fully crewed moon landing in 2028. Trump wants to squeeze the extraterrestrial achievement into his presidency before the final steps. And the cost is $100 billion. And the Artemis is picking up where the Apollo left off. Jared Isaacman, who is in charge of the project, said. And let's go over to our segment, Political Money. As we saw, this is costing $100 million. So, Anthony, take it away with Political Money.
We have a new segment, Bob, called Political Money. And the first thing I got to tell you is that once the astronauts find out how much gasoline is for the week, they may not come back. Gasoline for the week is now at $4.08, the highest it's been since 2022. Just to share some economic numbers for you for the week, believe it or not, unemployment actually went down. It went down from 4.4% to 4.3%, partially because employment, of course, went up. During the course of this week, the government, as well as private America, generated over 180,000 U.S. jobs, both part-time and full-time. I cannot give you sector yet because that's being broken down as we speak.
Yeah, but
Still
Anthony, why was New York State down 20,000 jobs then? That was reported by the controller.
Well, that number I just reported to you is nationally. When we talk about regionally and statewide, if you want me to, I can talk more about that at the segment next week about New York State in particular and its effect. Still talking about the events of the week, let's talk about the stock market. Now, I don't know if it's good news or bad news. The stock market is closed today. The bond market is open today. But for the week, believe it or not, we broke a 5-week losing streak. We are up for the week. We are up 3 to 4% for the week. Whether you are in your traditional stock market mutual funds or in your what I call sector-based mutual funds. Of course, the best ones for the week were the ones both in technology and in healthcare. But even generalized index funds made 3 to 4% for the week. Interest rates. Well, interest rates went up as well. And depending on what side of the interest rate fence you're on, that could, of course, be good or bad. A 10-year treasury you can now get at 4.5%, and a 30-year mortgage you can now get at 6.5%. Did anything else go up in our economy during the course of the week? Yes, Bob, something else went up. It's called income tax refunds. Income tax refunds on average went up about 10 to 15% for the week. If you remember at our segment last week, I gave some examples as to why that could happen. I've seen some recent evidence this week to show that I believe the real saving kingpin in the one big beautiful bill, believe it or not, is going to be the overtime factor. Now, of course, only 6 to 12% of Americans on average really do substantive overtime, but the laws now relating to overtime are very tremendous. I do not want to say that it's tax-free money. I won't go that far, but I will say based on the average person, they can bring in on average $25,000 of tax, let's call it overtime / tax-free income. Very significant for people that are doing overtime. But you know what, Bob? Let's talk about how do you get $1 million income tax refund next year? Because if you're looking to get it this year, don't call me. You can forget it. Every tax man in America is filled up. And if you call me, I'm hanging up the phone. But what about next year? And what about the year after? Everybody grab a pen. Because it really only takes 3 items to look at in your income tax and financial world. And I'm going to give you those answers right now, Bob, so you or anybody you know can get $1 billion income tax refund. Well, first thing I want to say is before we talk about those 3 areas, right? Did anybody overpay on their taxes, right? Because if they did, then of course that has to be adjusted. Notwithstanding that, get ready, Bob. The first thing one has to look at is all of their availabilities of income tax credits. The second area they got to look at, and I'm going to go over each one in a little more detail, is their income tax deductions. And then the third area they got to look at is their W-4 adjustment. What is the subtle difference between number 1, income tax credits, and number 2, income tax deductions? Very important. There were more income tax deductions in the IRS code than credits. But if one can be eligible for credits, credits are free money. They're basically IRS free money. And you get a dollar for dollar deductibility, which is why there aren't that many of them. Whereas with income tax deductions, you get what's called a lowering of your tax liability. How low? Generally speaking, your income tax bracket. Most most taxpayers, I'm being very general, most taxpayers are in a 15 to 20% federal bracket. If they're in a high state bracket, you could add another 10%. That would be 30%. So again, a 30% deduction is better than zero. But again, a tax credit is a 100% tax credit. So now to get back to number one, where areas in the tax code give you free money, give anybody free money? There are two particular areas. I'm not going to go into them overly specific because we could turn this into a 1-hour show. I'll give you my number afterwards. But look at children's credits, look at college credits. School credits and college credits are very wonderful in the IRS code. With children credits, and Robert, I know that you have a child, so I'm sure you know this as
those
well.
are going, those credits are going.
Huh? Well, yeah, well, for you, but the reason why they're gone is because, of course, when the child is born, right, you, of course, get all these wonderful tax credits. And then, of course, as the child gets older, the tax credits become less because the child is not becoming a child anymore. There are certain exceptions. If the child is going to college and staying at home, then the child is still considered a child up until the age of 24.
Right, and
but
doesn't earn any income. They can only earn X amount of dollars. They can't earn a regular salary either.
Well, that is correct. That is correct. And of course, there are different rules and regulations that apply. But if they are eligible, and I would say, you know, anyone that has a child, you want to look into what I call the 3 stages of children's tax credits. There are wonderful tax credits for children under the age of 13. That relates more towards babysitting and things of that nature. From 13 to 17, those are your teenage years. And then from 18 to 24, more geared towards college or pre-college. And then I mentioned college as part of that income tax, that income tax credit format. Now, income tax deductions, where you can only lower your tax liability, but in most cases, if eligible, you would be lowering it about 30%. Now, very important because this gets more wide-ranging. I'm not going to go into them in detail, but I will mention what I consider to be several that are important. So medical expenses, right? You want to have those examined. Your gifts to charity, you definitely want to have those examined. Retirement contributions, you know, we don't think about that in the income tax world, but when you put money into your retirement plan, you're lowering your gross income. And like with anything else, when you lower your gross income, you lower your tax liability. You lower your tax liability, your tax refund goes higher.
One question, Anthony, about that. Can you put into the IRA when you start taking out, though?
It depends which one you have. Good question. In the IRA world, there are 2. One is called still traditional. Another one is called Roth IRA. There are very specific rules and regulations for each. With the Roth IRA, yes, you can. Not with the traditional. But there are different benefits for one versus the other. So one has to, again, so when you keep hearing me use the word examine or speak to someone about it, that's the reason why, because there are different advantages for one versus the other. And with these type of situations, there is no one size fits all situation. You know, you want to create a situation that works for you. Health savings accounts, as I said a moment ago, I think they're very good, very popular. So again, you want to look at it in that area. Third and last area in getting $1 billion refund. If you work, everybody has to fill out a W-4. A W-4 is your withholding that you tell the job how much to take out in taxes. Now, trust me when I tell you, your job don't know the answer to that. Why? Because your job doesn't do income taxes. Your job is going to give you a form and tell you to fill it out. How come they're not going to help you? Because they do not want to be held liable. In the old days, they would help. In the old days, they get it wrong. And now they want you to get it wrong. And trust me when I tell you, you are going to get it wrong. The best thing you can do is go to your tax representative or go to a tax representative and have them number crunch what area that you should fall in. The best area one should fall in is where one says, okay, I want to pay my fair share in taxes. So I'm not getting a refund, not a large refund. I'm not getting, I don't know. I'm basically at that zero. Why do I want to be at that zero? For two reasons. Number one, so I don't owe, right? You never want to owe. And then number two, those first two areas that I mentioned, well, they're the ones now they're going to give you the bang. This one here is the one that's going to save you. That's how you get $1 billion income tax refund. 347-575-5045. Bob, back to you.
Do I have to change my name though before I get that $1 billion refund to say Donald J. Trump?
No, but I would suggest that you finally get that divorce that's been on pending.
It's done. We're gonna go. We got a few minutes before our commercial. We got 3 minutes, so let's go into the late state budget. The New York budget will be late again this year. Governor Kathy Hochul and the Democratic-led state legislature failed to reach an agreement ahead of Wednesday's deadline, making it the 7th consecutive year the budget will be passed after the April 1st start of the state's fiscal year. So that's every year that Kathy Hochul's been in office. Lawmakers have passed a 1-week budget extender on Tuesday this past week, ensuring state workers will get paid as scheduled this week, and they will be back on Tuesday. They're away now for 2 weeks vacation for the Passover and Easter holidays, but they will have to go back up Tuesday to put another extender on. The governor and lawmakers are still fussing over several weighty.
So Bob, and I apologize. So just so I can understand what you just said, I just want to try to understand what you just said. So in Congress, we're mad that we can't get anything done, right? Because some people say that the Democrats are going on vacation, right? Are these the same Democrats?
Down ballot, the Democrats, state level Democrats.
So then on the federal and on the state side, we're not getting government to work correctly because the Democrats want to go on vacation.
Well, yeah. And then there's a problem at the city level with the Democrats, with the Democratic mayor and Democratic city council, who have come up with different numbers on their budgets. But we'll get into that later in the show.
Aren't you so happy? Didn't I say first on this show that the one thing I liked about Julie Menon more than anything else is that she has common sense, right? Thank God, because Mandami, you know, I'm a retired college professor in finance, personal finance. He should come to one of my classes.
Let's finish up on this budget. The governor and lawmakers are still tussling over several weighty policy issues that have been swept up into the budget, despite talks having little effect on the state's revenue or spending. That includes a proposal to restrict local governments from cooperating with federal immigration authorities, and another to reshape auto insurance. Then there are taxes. Democratic lawmakers, in line with New York City Mayor Zohan Mandami, are hoping to raise taxes on the wealthy and corporations to help fund the mayor's agenda and plug the city's estimated $5.4 billion budget gap. Hochul opposes income tax hikes and has resisted other tax increases as she's running for re-election on a broad affordability policy. And for now, we are where we are, said State Senate Finance Chair Liz Kruger, a Manhattan Democrat. Late budgets have become a rite of passage in Albany for decades. Hochul, who took office in 2021, hasn't had an on-time budget yet, with last year's stalemate lasting till May 8th. That marked the latest state budget since 2010, when lawmakers finished passing it July 1st, according to data from the from the State Controller's Office. Just 10 of the last 40 budgets have been on time. We always like to have an on-time budget. Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie said, a Bronx Democrat, he said earlier in the month, but as I've always said, a better budget is more important than an on-time budget. I've been here for 26 years. Nothing phases me. And let's go to our commercial here as we'll come back with more state news and city news and what's going on in Brooklyn with the city councilwoman and her sister, who works for Governor Kathy Hochul, and 4 people who have been arrested from a nonprofit. So can we go to a commercial, Mr. Producer, please?
Imagine a media platform that reshapes the conversation, empowers your voice, and redefines the Bronx community. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative. For businesses, politicians, and government agencies, we offer targeted advertising solutions that drive results. Amplify your message. Reach the heart of the Bronx and beyond. Our platform connects you to the community. Learn more. Email info@bronxpost.com or call 718-892-5555. Visit www.bronxpost.com for breaking news and updates. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative.
Okay, welcome back. I'm going to continue with some state politics as Kathy Hochul's lead over her likely Republican opponent has shrunk by half over the past 2 months. Hochul leads Bruce Blakeman by just 13 points in the latest Sierra poll. While Kathy Hochul still holds a double-digit lead over Bruce Blakeman, the poll from Sierra College shows the lead has continued to dwindle. According to the new poll, Hochul would beat Blakeman, the current Nassau County executive, by 13 points among registered voters. That's down 7 points from the previous poll released at the start of the month, an even bigger dip compared to the 26-point lead Hochul had in early February. The poll shows her beating Blakeman 47-34. It's also the first time Hochul has not won the support of the majority of registered voters. While she maintains a narrow lead upstate and in downstate suburbs, her lead in New York City fell 46 points, 63 points, 63 to 17 to 29 points, 54 to 25. Right now, Sierra pollster Steve Greenberg says, is that movement or merely noise? Let's see what happens next month after the budget as the campaign unfolds. Blakeman still remains largely unknown among registered voters surveyed by Sierra. A whopping 64% of New Yorkers said they did not know who he was or had no opinion of him. The poll comes one day after Blakeman held a press conference in New York City denouncing Madami's proposal to tax the rich. The New York State Campaign Finance Board, made up of 4 Democrats, assigned by Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul, and 3 Republicans, voted along party lines to deny Bruce Blakeman matching funds in the State Campaign Finance Board for not filing a report with his lieutenant governor, a candidate on it. It is a form that does not exist, and Blakeman is appealing the decision to the courts. Moving on, here's something that should be right up your alley, Anthony. Tuesday marked 5 years since New York State legalized recreational marijuana. On March 31st, 2021, then Governor Andrew Cuomo signed the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act into law, making it legal for adults 21 and older to buy and possess marijuana. Since then, dozens of dispensaries have been
I want to congratulate our producer. Our producer deserves a lot of credit for being able to have the first economist on air that's high as a kite.
Okay. Officials acknowledge challenges. Dozen dispensaries have been licensed and open across the state, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue and creating thousands of jobs. As State Senator Gustavo Rivera, it's a great source of revenue. But when I asked him about,
hey, where's that bag he promised you?
Well, he still hasn't given me. But he still hasn't come up with a test to see drivers if they're intoxicated from cannabis. Okay, officials acknowledge challenges still remain, including a stubborn illegal market, according to John Kagi, the state Office of Cannabis Management acting executive director. Half of the state has opted out of having retail stores for now, meaning there's still a lot of opportunity for the industry to grow. We built an ecosystem in New York so far, he told Capital Tonight. Over 2,000 licensees across the entire supply chain. Still, cannabis business owners say they're faced with a lot of challenges along the way, including high taxes and expenses fees. Let's go to.
We had if you lived in New York in the 1970s, of course you knew about, the crime and the fires in the Bronx, but a lot of things that took place, especially in the Bronx in the 1970s, was considered sin crimes, right? So so when you really think about it, right, 50 years later, there are no sin crimes, right? We're actually promoting these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not saying, hide your marijuana. We don't want to see you out in the street. 50 years ago, I could have got arrested for 3 days for just smoking one joint.
Mm-hmm.
Today I can go out there and I can carry a whole bag as long as I don't sell it.
And you'll soon be able to go to a casino here in the Bronx, which you couldn't.
So that's just amazing that all of what I call quality of life issues 50 years ago, which we considered sin issues, especially if you were Catholic, today is legal.
As I said, Gustavo Rivera goes, money, 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 money. We can raise the budget. That's what the governor is doing, raising the budget. Everybody gets a piece. Okay. Now, I'm glad you said crime, Anthony, before, because Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch Thursday announced that the NYPD delivered the lowest murders and shooting incidents for the first quarter of the year in recorded history. During the first 3 months of 2026, there were 54 murders in New York City, beating the previous all-time low of 60 murders set in 2018. However, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch needs to visit the Bronx. By borough, murders were down more than 57% in Brooklyn, 12 versus 28 in 2025. More than 44% in Manhattan, 5 versus 9 in 2025. In nearly 6% in Queens, 16 versus 17 in 2025. Staten Island had 0 murders so far in 26. But in the Bronx, there were 2 more murders this year than in 2025, 21 versus 19, which is an increase of 12% in the murder rate in the Bronx. One bright spot was grand larceny. Citywide, which declined 3.6%, and it declined in the Bronx by 10.6%. So obviously our Bronxites are getting a little smarter and not leaving anything in their cars, because that was one of the major things of grand larceny. They left their laptops or whatever, and anything over $1,000 is considered a grand larceny. However, not in the 7 categories that make up the crime stats in the first quarter. And as she said, murders and shootings were down. Well, in the Bronx in 2026, shooting victims, there were 61 compared to 50 in 2025, an increase of 22%. And that's shooting victims. Shooting incidents were 51 to 45 in 2025, an increase of 13.3%. And for the last 28 days through March 29th, 2026, shooting victims in that period was 17 compared to the same time in 2025, where there were 11, or an increase, according to the police department, of 54.5%. In the 28 days through 3/29/26 shooting incidents, there were 15 in that time period compared to 11 in 2025, or it was an increase of 36.4%. It looks like that the crime stats were down in January and February, thanks to the 2 big snowstorms and very cold weather in those 2 months. And by the way, Anthony, you know that they divided the Bronx now into the North and South Division, and the 45th precinct is belongs in the North Division because it's Co-op City. It goes up to Co-op City, but it's in the South Division. And the 46th is in the North Division, which should be in the South Division because it goes down to the almost South Bronx. And I wonder what genius came up with 40 to 45 is in the South and 46 to 52 is in the North. As you and I both know, there is no 51st precinct. But we need, if they're going to divide it this way, we need 2 more precincts, 1 in the North and 1 in the South, because we have 3 precincts that have over 3,000 crimes in them, in those precincts alone. And the whole borough of Staten Island that has 4 police precincts has the same amount of crime. So It's unfair, Jessica Tisch. We need more police precincts. Now, let's move on to what happened in Brooklyn with Councilwoman Farrah Lewis. Federal prosecutors are investigating whether a New York City Council member and her sister and aide to Governor Kathy Hochul accepted bribes or kickbacks in connection with the appropriation of city funds to a migrant shelter provider, according to a copy of a search warrant obtained by the Associated Press. The warrant, signed March 19th, seeks evidence of possible criminal violations involving Council member Farrah Lewis, a Brooklyn Democrat, Debbie Lewis, who serves as Kathy Hochul's assistant secretary of New York City Intergovernment Affairs. It also names Edu Hermelin, the husband of State Assembly member Rodney Bichette Hermelin, who chairs the Brooklyn Democratic Party. A spokesman for Hochul confirmed that Debbie Lewis was placed on leave last week after the governor learned of the federal corruption investigation. The warrant for a phone connected to the investigation said prosecutors are seeking information about whether the three received benefits in exchange for action taken on behalf of BRAG, BHRAGS, Home Care Inc., a Brooklyn-based nonprofit that provided in-home services to sick and elderly. In 2022, an influx of asylum seekers began arriving in the city. The nonprofit expanded its mission to include emergency shelters for migrants and other homeless services. Records show they have since received more than a dozen contracts totaling over $200 million from the Department of Homeless Services. And it continues that the two former BRAG officials charged in the indictment were Roberto Samedi, who served as the firm's executive director, and Jean Ronald Turris, who has been the chairman of its board. The two vendors charged are former Sergeant Eduardo St. Fort and Miguel Jorge. Both men were tied to companies that provided security to the shelters. The indictment accuses the two vendors of steering business to the security companies from August 2020 to January 2024, while Mr. St. Fort and Mr. Jorge funneled bribes and kickbacks totaling more than $1.3 million to BRAG officials, prosecutors said. Some of the embezzlement occurred in May 2023, prosecutors said, when Mr. Turris asked the BRAG board for $800,000 to aid economic growth and affordable housing in the distressed area of New York City. The two men also steered lucrative services worth more than $4 million in total to vendor companies run by the two vendors that provided private security, furniture, and more to homeless shelters. In exchange for steering them, the contract, Mr. Jorge and Mr. St. Fort paid Mr. Samedi and Mr. Tiris more than $175,000 in kickbacks, prosecutors said. BRAG, in a statement, said the company has been cooperating with the investigation for more than 50 years. It has served New Yorkers in need with integrity and the highest ethical standards, and we take allegations against Mr. Samedi seriously, the statement said, adding that the executive director has been placed on administrative leave and that another official has assumed his duties. Any comments on this?
You know what, Bob? If you'll allow me, I wanna sort of re-review everything you just said in layman's terms to be sure A, I heard it correctly, and B, that the audience truly understands what you just said. So if I heard you correctly, you said that in the last 2 years out of 50, because you ended it by saying that they've been providing services for 50 years. So for the last 2 years, there was all of a sudden corruption. And corruption came from the city council person. And corruption came from the assistant. And corruption came from the security, right? And corruption came from this person. And notice what I'm saying. What I'm saying is none of this could have happened overnight.
No, it goes back to 2020, it says.
Yeah, okay. No. Yeah, that's what it says, right? None of this could have happened.
Right.
So this goes way back. And I really think there should be some possibility. I don't know what's going to happen, but some possibility that someone in the city council should say, you know what, whether we agree on housing or not as a borough, and we got 5 boroughs, whether we agree as whether we need more housing or not, some of these contracts really need to be relooked at. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how independent you do it, but here in the Bronx, I think I can very easily mention 3 or 4 or 5 companies alone, right, that have the majority of these contracts. It's not like they have 1 or 2. It's more like they got 10 or 20. And like I said, these things don't happen overnight. My opinion, that's the perfect textbook, playbook example of housing corruption.
Well, right now, the mayor and the city council are having fights or arguments about how much, where to cut. And the mayor's preliminary budget, the council has looked at an estimated $6 billion shortfall identified by the council over 2 years, offering dozens of proposals that identify new resources that can be achieved through cost and revenue re-estimates, efficiencies, and reforms, and additional revenue raises without cutting services. But it seems that the mayor swiftly hit back on all of these issues that the council raises, and I don't have enough time to get into each one, calling Menon's City Council Speaker Julie Menon's preliminary budget unrealistic and accusing the council of double counting and overestimating. And as far as costs goes, here are the costs for the borough jails. The Brooklyn Borough Jail will be costing $3 billion and is expected to be finished somewhere about 2029. The Queens is going to cost $4 billion with a completion date of 2031. The Bronx is projected to be $3 billion with an estimated completion date of 2031. And in Manhattan, it's going to cost $3.8 billion with a completion date of 2032. So, you want to close Rikers, these jails aren't going to be ready for another 7 years totally. And they're going to cost approximately almost $14 billion. And we know with cost overruns, they'll probably be double the cost. As we saw with
let me ask you something in regards to your analogy. So if we're looking 10 years down the road, right? Do you think Rikers will have an increase or decrease in population 10 years from now?
Well, Rikers is supposed to be closed. Okay, period. And I was told a couple of years ago by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that since Governor Andrew Cuomo spent billions of dollars to upgrade LaGuardia into a world-class airport, that they need to have their runways extended onto Rikers Island so they can have the big jets land there. The 747, right now, they can only handle small jets. So that could be one of the reasons, right? There's also a proposal of building a new highway from Long Island to the Bronx through Rikers Island. So there's another proposal for housing there. So we don't really know what's going to happen to Rikers. But right now they're holding about 7,000 prisoners, or inmates, I should say. And the new borough jails will only be able to hold about 4,500 to 5,000 people. So
do you think 10 years from now that number will be higher?
We don't know, Anthony. We really don't know. And
would you agree or disagree that if they were higher, they would have to hold off on building new jails?
Well, the thing is, Staten Island doesn't have a jail. They may have to build one in Staten Island to hold more people. But I want to move on to the petitioning. This is from the Board of Elections, the petition calendar. I don't know if you can see it. There we go. The petition calendar. Petitions were for the state elected officials and for Congress. In essence, like I've been saying, Governor Kathy Hochul is up for re-election, as well as your state assembly person, your state senator, and your congressperson. And the petitioning has been going on since the last week of February. Monday, March 30th was the first day to hand in petitions. And Monday, April 6th will be the last day to hand in petitions, designated petitions. Now, as Anthony and I know, there are normally general objections that are placed on some petitions that either certain party officials or certain independents believe are not good for filing general objections. Any petition that was filed on Monday, March 30th, you have, well, the date is passed. It was yesterday at April 2nd. So, if there was no petition, no objections filed against petitions on Monday, March 30th, they're free and clear. Monday, April 6th, the last day to file any general objection is Thursday, April 9th. And if you file general objections, you have to file specifications on why you filed the general objections. And the last day to file that general objections, if they were filed against the first day legally, they have till Wednesday, April 8th. And again, it goes down to the last day of Monday, April 15th. And the hearings will be held at the Board of Elections in Manhattan, 42 Broadway, on Thursday, April 28th and Wednesday, April 29th. If needed, there will be additional hearings on the next day, Thursday, April 30th. But it looks like there's not going to be too many candidates filing. I don't expect many objections. And I don't think our friend Stanley Schlein will have a lot of business because I don't see any real candidates coming out. Do you see any real candidates?
Robert, that's another conversation for another time. But you are right on the whole that, I've been saying to people that, as people like you and people like me get older, of course, everybody else gets older too, but you have a new generation that now is, coming into its own force. And I'm a little amazed as to how in some areas in the Bronx that hasn't blossomed yet. Of course, I do expect it to blossom. It just hasn't blossomed yet. To be a little more specific with the question you asked a minute ago, it seems like there are certain candidates that are getting out there in the 84th Assembly District, and this is a third-hand report, not a direct report. I heard that Cortland Hankins, who is a candidate there, just handed in 3,000 signatures. I can't confirm that directly, but I have heard that through a campaign source that I know works with him on a daily basis.
He is challenging incumbent
Amanda Septimo.
Amanda Septimo, yes, who decided she's not going to go against Richie Torres and stay for her assembly seat.
Correct.
And
I've also heard that with the Unity let me say the Unity Club, which is based in Riverdale, and forgive me because I'm trying to remember the woman's name. She is running against Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz. Oh, I can't remember her name at the moment. I apologize. But I understand that the Unity group came in with approximately 2,000 signatures. Again, I heard that third hand through a member of her organization. I apologize. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. I need more coffee. And I also heard that Bronx County that was doing some work specifically for Assemblyman John Socorro, who I understand had more of a slate-related petition. I understand, again, according to third-hand reports, that his group came in with approximately 1,800 signatures. In my opinion, all good. Average requirement, as you know, is 450. General rule of thumb is to get 3 times that amount. Of course,
well,
in our day,
even more, Anthony, because you and I worked on campaigns in the early 2000s where we came in with 3,000 or more. So that was 6 times, so nobody would have dare challenge. But
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. When I received those reports, it was funny because when I received them, of course, the people that told me those numbers were very proud of them, and they should be proud of them. I don't think they should be. They should be proud of them. But again, like you say, I remember the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, where 3,000, 4,000, 5,000.
We're going to have to discuss this next week, Anthony, because we're running out of time. I want to say thank you to Frenchie, who said hello.
Hey, Frenchie.
And let's wrap it up and say goodbye. So anything quickly? You got 15 seconds, Anthony.
Watch us next week. We're going to talk about political money and see if we can get some Pam Bondi bikini pictures.
Okay, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next week here on Talking Politics.
Imagine a media platform that reshapes the conversation, empowers your voice, and redefines the Bronx community. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative. For businesses, politicians, and government agencies, we offer targeted advertising solutions that drive results. Amplify your message. Reach the heart of the Bronx and beyond. Our platform connects you to the community. Learn more. Email info@bronxpost.com or call 718-892-5555. Visit www.bronxpost.com for breaking news and updates. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative.